Dr. Aimie Apigian, welcome to the Root Cause podcast.
Thank you. It's really good to be here.
Thank you. So first, congratulations on the new book. Pub date, just want to show everybody here, the biology of trauma. So the pub date is when?
Tuesday, September 23.
Tuesday, September 23rd. And how many pre-orders have you done as of now?
17,898.
Wow. That is amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is so needed. So first, before we dive in, just tell the audience who you are and what you really, what is that vision that you have?
I'm Dr. Aimie Apigian. I'm a double board certified preventive medicine and addiction medicine physician. I've had quite the journey, as many of us have. I actually came through medical school also doing a master's in biochemistry and then a master's in public health, and then 4 years of general surgery before I was like, no. We really want to study trauma and the body. And my first, it's my initiation in trauma was when I became a foster parent. And I became a foster parent in the months between finishing my master's in biochemistry and jumping back into the third year of medical school. It was something that I'd always had a heart for. I've always had a heart for kids who are hurting, not knowing how much that was tapping into my own trauma. And so when I had a few months free, it just felt like the most natural next best step for the best use of my time to really step in and make a difference. And I did not know where this was going to lead me. I had no idea the impact that this would have on my life personally and professionally. And I still remember the call that I got from Rosa, the social worker. And she says, we have a 4-year-old boy and he needs a home. It was an immediate yes. She didn't even need to tell me more information. And as she told me more information, though, it became clear that he had had a lot of trauma and he had already had 20 different placements by the time he came to me.
Wow.
Placements meaning not placed in a family, but just being moved around and moved from this holding space to this group home, to this family and out of the family. And his trauma had been so much that at this point, his behaviors were so reactive that he was not able to be in any other family that had children or pets. So they thought, here's a medical student. She has no children. She has no pets. She's not married. She's perfect.
She's perfect.
She's perfect. And again, taking Miguel in, I had no idea the impact that this would have on my life. And a few months later, I decided to adopt him. I did not know how I was going to do this. I did not know how I was going to manage it. He came with so much issues, so much in this tiny body. And it's actually how I start my book. I start my book with a moment with Miguel where it was one of our lowest moments. And it really showcased the degree of pain that he was in and didn't know his way out. And I didn't know the way out. I didn't know the solution. So that's what started me on this journey. So here I am, a medical student by day, learning about medicine and protocols and diagnoses and treatments and what to prescribe. And then by night and by weekends, I'm a mom trying to find answers for her son. And it took me into studying attachment, took me into studying attachment trauma. And these were things that I'd never studied before. But as I studied them, and especially as I watched his reactivity towards me, I realized that he was just a mirror into my own soul.
Yeah.
And I had so much guarding of my heart that I would do. I was afraid of being seen. I was afraid of being known. I was afraid of opening myself up to only be hurt. And I had never seen these aspects of myself before. Of course, I didn't have time to deal with it because I've got a son and I'm in medical school and then headed off to general surgery residency. And so I kept putting it off until, part of the story is that I had Miguel for 6 years. And then that adoption terminated and it broke my heart. It was the hardest thing I have ever been through. And the year was 2014.
Wow.
And 1 month later, I couldn't get out of bed one morning. I wake up, could not get out of bed. And for someone who has run 5 marathons and bikes all the time and drugs and hikes, it was It was inconceivable that this had become my life, this had become me, and I had completely lost myself in the process of pouring myself out for others. And so that's what started my own trauma work. I woke up and I was like, Aimie, it's time. Whether you want it to be or not, you have now got to do your own trauma work because it has become your biology. So that's what started this whole idea around what has become my book and my work around the biology of trauma, is realizing that trauma had become my biology, not just psychology. And so it's going to take a lot more for repair of my mind, body, and biology to get my life back, to get my health back, to get my career back, than some person who it hadn't affected them to that degree. And then I started seeing this in all of my patients, and I realized that no human goes untouched. We have all been affected by trauma. We're all carrying wounds from the past, and it's just, to what degree do you want it to continue to impact your life, or are you ready to do the work?
Yeah. So what was the reason why you didn't choose the traditional path, of becoming a psychiatrist, right? And just buying into the narrative of big pharma, right? Like these are the drugs that you need to prescribe to make this individual feel better.
I was part of the conventional system that I now call the corporate system.
Nice. Yeah, by the way, this is your rebel story. I just want to hear it because this is really the divide, right?
Yes.
You stepped over that line. You're
Yes.
like, that now is corporate system.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to look back and see how much a part of it I was, and I was trained in it. So no fault of my own, I do what I'm trained to do, which again, I started in general surgery. And so it's all about evaluating the patient, deciding that they need surgery, taking them to surgery, and then looking at what am I prescribing them and what happens next to them. And that's where I really started to see that there's a deeper pattern here to who is coming in with these health issues, and being able to see the patients who started to develop addictions to the pain pills that I was prescribing after a surgery. In fact, my very first patient in general surgery, my very first surgery was a lady in her 60s who had developed such severe constipation from all the pain pills she had been taking.
How many was
for
she on?
so long. I mean, she was now popping about 20 pills a day.
Oh my gosh.
Well, we say, oh my gosh, but yet for her, this had become normal.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of like what we do with supplements, right?
Exactly.
They're like, you're taking that many supplements?
Right? It's all context.
It's just a capsule.
There's always someone who's taking more that we can feel better about ourselves.
Your bag is fuller than mine. Look at that.
And to see the degree to which she had allowed this to impact her, and that it actually needed surgery because it had eroded the backside of her colon, and we had to go in and clean all of that up. And to see the degree of pain that people are in, and really both their health and their coping mechanisms that influence their health are oftentimes just strategies to try to find relief from the inner pain that we feel. And going through this system, it really didn't click for me until I got sick and I became the patient. And in that moment, I started going and trying to figure out what was wrong with me, and most of my labs were normal, and yet I am in such severe fatigue that I'm having to take a medical leave. And in the process, we discover autoimmunity. We discover, I get diagnosed with chronic fatigue of unknown etiology. And this is how I discover functional medicine. It was in this pursuit of trying to get my own health back. And once I found functional medicine, my perspective started to shift in terms of I'm noticing what's working for me. And so why am I not doing that for my patients? It really became clear to me how I am part of just managing symptoms, putting Band-Aids on symptoms with medications, rather than looking at why is this happening in the first place? And now that I have this trauma lens, it no longer just stops with the biochemistry, but it goes back to, well, what is driving my biochemistry? Is this trauma pattern actually driving my biochemistry, that we need to go back that far to really look at how can I have a different life that's not just making the best of my condition? As I switch into preventive medicine and addiction medicine, that decision was only based on my desire to study trauma and the body. And as I am working on this, I'm realizing how much the nervous system which is where trauma gets stored in the body, how much the nervous system drives everything in our life, our choices, our behaviors, our thoughts, our relationships, our health. And yet here again, I'm part of a system that I see patients for 5 minutes and I write them a prescription and I wish them well. And especially in addiction medicine, it was so hard for me, and it became something that would literally eat at me. I could feel my insides twisting when I go to write that prescription because I know it's not going to work. And in addiction medicine, we have to face the reality of overdoses. And here I'm having patients overdosing, and I'm mourning their loss. I'm mourning their death. I had come to know them. I had come to consider them dear friends. And so to be in that space where I'm working with life and death,
Yeah.
I am only wanting to do something that will truly help them. And yet, as I go to do that and bring in some of these aspects around the nervous system healing and regulation and some trauma therapy exercises that I know will help, health insurance is not covering it. And they're still telling me, well, sorry, you can only bill for 5 minutes because that's all that you're actually doing for a medical appointment. The rest is this other thing that we can consider, lifestyle coaching, but you can't bill for that kind of thing. And it quickly became a values misalignment with me that it was starting to make me physically sick again, walking into the hospital, knowing that I was not aligned with how I was serving my patients.
Wow. Talk about the root cause of trauma.
Yeah.
Where does this all start?
Yes. As I started studying trauma, I could see how the body experiences something that is so hard. It feels so unbearable in the moment, creates a level of terror that is far beyond just feeling anxious or scared. And watching how the body adapts to that to help us still survive and get through something like that. But then the question always came up for me, but why does it hold on to that? If this is something that we experienced in our past, why is the body holding on to that? Why am I seeing patients who are experiencing the impact of something that happened to them 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago? Why is the body holding on? So that's then what I started to study when I got sick, because clearly that's what had happened to me. My body was holding on to something. I didn't even know what it was holding on to because I never would have said, oh, I had a traumatic childhood. No, especially compared to my son. And I know we're not supposed to compare, but we all do it anyway.
Yep.
And compared to him, who was I to use the word trauma? So it really became a scientific question for me of like, well, then what's going on? Maybe I don't understand trauma. So that's really when I started deep diving into the nervous system. And when does that shift happen that it goes from being something stressful to something that crosses a line? What makes us cross that line? What happens when we cross that line? And why has it been so hard for people to do the healing after they cross that line so that they don't live with that impact? And I remember many conversations with patients who have a high ACE score or adverse childhood experiences. And this became a big motivating factor for my rebel cause, which was they would say, but Dr. Aimie, you should know something about me. I have a high ACE score.
So it was a badge of honor.
This is why. I have this poor health. And I have a high ACE score. There's nothing we can do about it. They had literally come to accept this poor health, poor relationships as the rest of their life because, well, this was my past. And that's really what I wanted to shift. And I saw that medicine, even to this day, does not have the framework, the solutions to address, no, this doesn't need to be a life sentence. Medicine has done a great job of showing the research that says this is your life sentence. In fact, you can expect to die early. Those with a high ACE score have a higher mortality. And they have more severe symptoms with whatever health condition they have, and it's now been associated with every single chronic health condition. And so they give this prognosis without giving any kind of a framework of like, so here's what you can do about it. And that's where I wanted to step in, because I wanted to be able to tell my patients, yes, I understand that this has been your past and it doesn't need to be your future. And I wanted to bring that framework into medicine.
So when you wrote the book then, what was the reason? I understand the reason why you wanted to write the book, but what's the ultimate goal of the book? Like, and is there any book like this out there, in the book world? Because we know there's a lot of health books and written by doctors and all that, but this one to me seems very unique, right? Because you're diving into something that you're not really just looking at the system. It's really about the biology of it, right? So you talked about the history of the trauma.
What I find missing is the knowledge that people have of their own inner world. It is confusing to them. They're experiencing and feeling emotions that are confusing. They feel big. And so it feels safer to just try to pack it down rather than to know how to feel those things and how to move through those feelings. And so the understanding of our inner world became an element where I could see if I could give someone that knowledge, it wouldn't be so scary. It has been so scary for people to say, yeah, let me unpack my trauma. It's the thing that we all want to avoid.
Yeah.
It's the thing that we all want
Don't wanna
to
face it.
push off until maybe like me, you reach a point where you're like, I can't push this off any longer.
Yeah.
But no one that I've met has been like, yeah, let's unpack all of this stuff that I've been holding
Let's
for
sit
years.
down for lunch and let me just tell you
Exactly.
everything.
Right. Because when we experience what we'll call a trauma, right? And I lay that out in my book of these are the 5 steps that have to happen in your physiology for it to be a trauma. When that happens, it creates sensations that are unbearable. If we were able to feel them in the moment, it never would have become a trauma. So that's that crossing the line is it makes it feel like it is so much bigger than us.
Yeah.
So then in that moment when I'm asking people to feel, this is where I've realized that we've needed to bring in a framework for even having people feel safe enough to feel. And what I see is largely missing in medicine is this idea of safety first. We overwhelm our patients with protocols, whether those are protocols for all of the physical therapy they're supposed to do or the supplements that they're supposed to take or the lifeline that they're supposed to fill out before you even have your first appointment. Tell me everything that's happened to your life before you have ever even met me, but pour it all out on a piece of paper.
The intake form.
The intake form. There's so many aspects that we're missing when it comes to actually understanding what is a trauma, how do we experience it, why do we hold on, and how does that change what we do as clinicians and practitioners?
Interesting. What would you recommend a doctor who is in your situation back in 2014, right? And really working for the system, and you're like, something's wrong here, right? You got to step out of this thing. I'm sure it was very frightening, right, for you because like
Scary.
you thought this was the path,
I did.
right? And then you realize it wasn't the path. It really turned out to be a conglomerate of a bunch of corporations strung together to continue to increase profits and build more revenue. And a lot of the companies involved are publicly traded, right? They have quarterly earnings they need to report, right? So it's a system and it is a juggernaut. So, doctors who, want to practice medicine, they want to do exactly what you're doing, right? They want to write a book. And
we want to make a difference.
They want to make a difference.
I don't know of any person who goes into medical school and all that it takes to get into medical school who isn't there because they want to make a difference.
Yeah. They don't want to just go and spend 5 minutes with a patient and chart and do all the things they have to do, right?
It's not who they really are.
No, it's not. But they're forced into it. But they, listen, they have a choice. But at the same time, it's like you go down a traditional path. What is your options, right?
Well, and I hear you say they have a choice, and yet back then it didn't feel like a choice.
Oh.
And this was one of the aspects around my story with Miguel. Miguel had a healing experience. I continued to try to find all the different therapies that were going to help him. And he did get well. And it was when he got well that now he's home with me all the time. He's ready to have a relationship with a mom. He's ready to be in school with kids. And I'm still single, and now I'm in general surgery residency.
Yeah.
And it took me to a place where I didn't feel like I had a choice to be able to choose to be a mom. And I had to choose my training over my relationship with him.
Wow.
Killed me. I mean, it took me down into such a low place to feel like I didn't have a choice. And so then when years later, when I'm realizing, no, I really am so misaligned with what I'm doing with my patients that I have to create something different. It took me back to that place of, I still don't feel like I have a choice, because they don't teach us those choices in medical school. They don't teach us business. All they teach us is medicine. And so then we're coming into this system where this is all we know. And if this is all we know, we often don't feel like we have a choice.
Yeah.
We look at people outside and we look at, celebrity physicians, and we're like, we can't even understand that. Like, how did they even do that? Why would they even do that? Are they even a real doctor anymore? And so it feels so worlds different that many of the people that I've talked with, it's such a big leap that we don't even see that as a choice.
Right.
We see that if we leap, we fall. And why would we intentionally put ourselves in that position?
So what can the systems, right? These doctors that are, in the world of psychiatry, they're dealing with the challenges, right? With a lot of, and we don't need to really go into the depths of why a lot of this thing has happened, right? Because we know a lot of it is because of, toxins and things like that enter the body. But what can the system do to really start to look at this problem and say, you know what, let's just take it a few steps to where we can really start to maybe add some functional, some integrative type of things to really start to address the problem, because the problem's not getting any better. It's only getting worse.
Yeah. Call me a pessimist, but I don't see the system changing.
Yeah.
And I don't see the system changing from the top down.
Yeah.
I see the system changing from the bottom up, where, and interestingly, that's how we do the best trauma work, is not top down, but bottom up.
Interesting.
And bottom up to me means the patients need to come in and start asking for this. They create the demand for it. And just like then any other business, since medicine has become a business, the patients, the customers demand something, and the system needs to change to meet that demand. And so if the patients were to come in and start demanding integrative, functional medicine, no, like, I want these other labs drawn. No, I don't want just the pill. I want the real root cause here.
Yeah.
That's how I see the system changing, which is why I love to collaborate with other colleagues of mine who are in this space now. And we are going directly to the patients so that then they can go to their regular physicians and say, this is what we want. That's how I see the system changing.
And this is so important. This is why the book is so important. This is why podcasts are so important. This is why social media is so important.
Exactly.
Is because you got to get the word out. But the other side of this is that you, as a physician, business owner, need to have a solid business.
Yes.
Right. And so talk about that aspect of it, right? Because you're changing, like, you really are changing the definition of trauma. Right. But in order to do that, you need to have financial legs underneath you that's going to get you through. Of course, there's going to be some challenging times, right? But you've got, like, these doctors need to build these platforms so that the vibration can start to increase, right? And people start to pick up on it and say, there's a different way.
Yeah.
Because most people are in a trance, right? They believe the white coat, they believe the system, they believe the pharmaceuticals are going to solve everything. And we know that's not the case. So
I call that a chronic freeze in my book.
Chronic freeze?
Yes.
I love this.
It's this state where you just go along with whatever you're being told, because you do feel like you're out of options. You're powerless against the larger system, and you're all alone. And I think that's part of the aspect of coming into a community like this, where you have now a community where this is what we all do.
Yeah.
We're all building our businesses. So you're not feeling alone in that process. And we're all being able to go and direct to the patients. But being able to have a community has been so critical for even having the courage to show up and create something different, do something different. and being able to have people who've gone before you that can show you it is possible. It is possible to run a business and be able to create the platform where you can have the impact that you really want to have in the world.
Yeah, it's so important. So I think last question is, what would you recommend to that physician that's listening to this right now that is saying, oh my gosh, like I need to find a way to break out of this thing? What's your recommendation for them?
My recommendation would be, I love that you're thinking about that, love that you're feeling that, and lean into that. And what I found really helpful was to get clarity on what is it that I feel misaligned with, so that then I even have clarity of in the direction that I want to move. Until I had that clarity, I felt like I was just spinning my wheels and I didn't know how to get out because I didn't know where I was trying to get out of. And having that clarity, which is why coming to conferences, coming to, Health Business Growth Conference has been so amazing, because you gain that clarity around that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
When you hear someone else talk about what they're doing, it gives you the clarity of, well, it wouldn't look exactly like that, but this is what I would want it to look like. And then you have a true north. And now you can start to map out that process, that roadmap of, well, if this is my starting place, what would just be the next best step for me to move towards that? It might not be the big jump or the big leap sometimes. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's just, can I take just the next best step towards that? And then the next step becomes even easier. And then you get into the community and the next step becomes even easier.
Right.
And then before you know it, you're looking back at who you used to be, and you're shocked at how much change you've been able to create in your life, in your business, in your impact, because of just one step at a time towards your true north.
It's just taking action, right?
Taking
like
action.
that thought, that spark
Yes.
that says it's time to activate.
Yes.
And
I still remember that first moment when I opened my first online course. And I remember posting it in the group. And I remember JJ responding, being like, great, you took action. And I look back at that post and I was like, I just made $1,000 on my first online course. And I was thinking $1,000 was great.
Right.
And now I look back and being like, oh my goodness, I thought $1,000 was great. Like, look at how far I've come.
Yeah.
But that was my first step.
Yeah.
My first step was just, okay, let me give this a try. And it didn't need to be big. It didn't need to be huge. It just needed to be the first step, but action.
Yeah. It wasn't viral.
It was not viral.
It was a step
anything
by
but
step.
viral.
Anything but viral. There were lots of peaks and valleys, right?
Lots of peaks
So
and valleys.
congratulations on the book. Again, the pub date is
September 23.
September 23rd. And for anybody who wants to get a copy of The Biology of Trauma by Dr. Aimie Apigian, where would they find this book?
Amazon. Amazon is the place to go. And then you can come and also get my 5-day nervous system reset at biologyoftrauma.com/book.
I love this. I love this. And you know what? We're just waiting for the New York Times list
Yes, we are.
to come out. It's going to be very exciting. So congratulations. Thank you, Dr. Aimie, for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you.